We're up to Amar Mar and Chafim this just about on page 25, 25b, and bottom two lines. Okay, we thank Hashem. We're able to learn every day. In this course of our learning, we should have the base of Migdash for Shlema for anyone that needs. Amar Mar, we learned before, this was actually a statement from Rabbi Yochanan that if we're talking about if a Nazir has money that was designated for his karbanos, but then he passed away. So that was one of the options. The other possibility was that maybe we're dealing with a woman that took on herself to be a Nazira, and then her husband annulled the vow. Right, that was the other case. And now this money, what happens with this money? So if the money is undesignated, so we said all the money goes to be used as an ayla, ipul and a dava. If the money is not specified, this one goes for this and this one goes for that. And we said, how can you do that? But there's the money of the chatas is there, and the money of the chatas, has to be thrown into the sea. So we said, no, it's a special halacha by a nazir, that's the way we do it. So Amar Mar, Master Torah, halacha hi ben nazir. This is a special halacha that's by a nazir, and it's a unique halacha that even though there's money that's designated, but it's not designated, there's money that's allocated for a chatas, a sin offering, and that money is not allowed to be used for anything else. And now you're going to take it and use it for an ayla. That's the halacha Sinai that you can do it yet. That you can do that. It's a tradition from Moses at Sinai. Gemara says, "V'suleka." What's your emphasis here? That this is what we say by a nazir and nothing else. We have sources that say that this halacha doesn't just apply to nazir; it applies to other scenarios where they also have to bring karbanos, and in that is also money that's for a chatas. And we say the same thing, that you can use it all for an ayla, even though you have that money that's in it. Well, Tanya, we have a brisa. It says like this: there are other people that need to bring a set of offerings. A khan is a nest. I have to bring two birds. So other people that need to bring two birds. So for example, that could be a zav when he becomes pure. Just use a mayan to become pure, or a zava or a yeledes. They have to bring these birds to as part of their purification. So shehefrishu, or on top of chavav, shehefrishu mois lekineim, that they designated money for their pair of birds that they have to bring. Okay, now the case was that they then became wealthy. Now the rule with these birds is that bring them if you're at a certain bracket. Otherwise, you bring the animal when they're wealthier. This applies also by a Metzaira, that if during his purification process, that if he's in one bracket, then he brings the birds. If he's wealthier, then he brings the animals. So what now? He has money that's designated for the birds, and the rule is Ratza lahavi behem chatas behema yavi. If you want to use it all for a chatas animal, you probably have to add additional money to be able to get from two birds to an animal. But you take this money, use it all, plus additional money for the chatas. Yavi, you can do that. Aylas behema. If you want to do the burnt offering, which is the elevation offering, then you can do that as well. Mace, let's say he passed away. The person that had this this obligation to bring these sacrifices, the money was not specified for which sacrifice it's for. The rule was yipul and adav. It gets used as a burnt offering. The dava, when the mizbeach was empty, they brought these extra sacrifices. Question is that you said that this is only by a nazir. Turns out that it's not only by a nazir; it's by other cases as well. Okay, so the Gemara answers it's not a very strong question because Tana Nazir v'chayv kinen de damalek. We said Nazir, and we mean also other people that require more than one sacrifice, for example, birds. So that would be the same, anything that's similar to the Nazir, which means anything that's more than one sacrifice, would have the same halacha. Our question was, it seems that it's only by Nazir, but we find that it's not by Nazir. It's not only by Nazir, it's by other things. The answer is you're right. It's by other things as well. So what happened when we said halachi ben Nazir? We meant halachi ben Nazir and v'chol damila, anything that's in that category, anything similar to that. Okay, now the Gemara says, lafuke mihad Tanya. And this is going to exclude, this is different than what it was taught in the Brisa. Now, there's two possibilities. One possibility is that it's different because the opinion in this Brisa argues on what we said. The other possibility is that what was taught in this Brisa is a different scenario. It's not an argument, it's just a different case. Okay. It says like this. Mishahaya mechuyev chatas. Someone that has to bring a carbon chatas. Why would he have to bring a carbon chatas? Because he committed a sin. It would be a sin that would incur karis if it was done on purpose, and because it was done by mistake, he has to bring a carbon chatas, a negative prohibition, a typical typical negative prohibition, like he ate forbidden fats or something by mistake. He has to bring a carbon chatas if he's sure about it. But Amar, and he has some money. He says, "Hari alai oila b'hifrish mais." But Amar, he accepts on himself. Besides for chatas, he accepts on himself also to bring an oila, and now he separates money. Okay, when he separates the money, he says, "Amar hari l'chavasi." This is for my obligation. The interesting thing here is that he has several obligations, right? He says, this is for my obligation. First of all, he has a chatas. And the obligations are not related to one another. And then he also took on himself a vow that he's going to give a burnt offering. So what happens now? When he designates this money, it could be a chatas, it could be a naila, it could be both. So it says like this. If he wants to use that money to bring his chatas, which he committed a sin, he has to bring a chatas. Allah yavi, he's not allowed to bring it. Okay, so let's still try the other one. Oilas behema. He wants to use it to bring the burnt offering, which he accepted on himself as a vow that he's going to bring a burnt offering, elevation offering. Allah yavi, he's not allowed to do that either. What does he do with this? What he needs to do is, Taisva says over here, what he brings is, he does two animals. And he says, whatever this money is, it should be exchanged for these animals. So for example, he says it like this. If the money contains chatas money, so that should go towards this animal that I have right here, which I'm bringing as a chatas. If this money contains oila money, so that should be exchanged for this animal right here that I'm bringing as a oila. And then the money would become now a mundane money, and the two animals are left in their sanctity. That's the only way to get out of this. You have to bring two animals, and then you can't just take this money alone and spend it on the two animals. He has to get two animals with other money, and then he can take this money and exchange it for those animals. Okay. Mace, let's say he passed away. The person that has this obligation, and he has money that's not what's the word we're using? It's not specified.
In my mind, I would mean designated.
Right, not designated. Stuman means undesignated. It's undesignated. So then what does he do now? So it says Yelchli Yamamelech, he can't do anything with it. He can't bring another sacrifice because he can't bring him a sacrifice because he died. You don't bring a sin offering for someone after they died. So we just have this money. Can't do anything with the money. you have to throw it into the sea. Okay. The salt sea. Is that what it says there? The Dead Sea?
They say Dead Sea.
Yeah. Aaron, Raphael. So he always tell me. When it says Yamamelach, does it mean the ocean? Because every ocean has salt. It doesn't mean specifically the Yamamelach, the Dead Sea. That's this question. I think it's based on a Rambam somewhere that said it says Yamamelach means this or means that. Ask him. When you see him, ask him. Oh, it says Yamamelach. What does it mean? Okay. Amar Ravashi. Ravashi says, Hada Amrit Mifrashin. Loi. This that you said that if money has been specified, designated, that you cannot say that you can just bring it as an oila. Like we said with the Halach L'Meshim Sinai from Rabbi Yochanan, that if there's money that's unspecified, so even though there's chatas in there, you can bring it as an oila. But if it is specified, then you can't bring it as an oila. What happens? You have to, if it's specified, then each one has its own halacha. So for example, we said that the chatas, that has to go into the sea. The money that's specified for the shlamim is brought as a shlamim. The money that's specified for an oila is brought as an oila. Don't say that it's specifically when he says, this money over here is for my chatas. This money in this pile is for my oila. This money is for my shlamim. That's the vowelization there. But for Russian, even if he doesn't specify, he doesn't separate the money into different piles, but he just specifies the sacrifices that this money is going to be brought with. So then he already has he's already considered specified, and then it has to be brought each one according to its ruling. It can't just all be an ayla. That's our first statement, first version of what Ravashi said. Bikadamri, those that say a little different. Amar Ravashi says, you don't even have to say, this is for my sin offering, this is for my burnt offering, this is for my shlamim. Thank you. Even if he says, this is for my obligation, that's already Harei Henkima for Rashi. Wow. Already as if he specified. The problem is, what we're going to ask right now, what the commentaries ask, is that Taisvis, the Rosh, you just said before that if you say L'chevasi, then that's considered stumim, and then you had that other issue of if it was two different obligations, one was for a chatas because he committed a sin, and one was for an ayla. So you said we didn't know what to do with it over there. You had this whole problem. If he died, you had to throw the money into the sea. Now you're telling me that if he says Harei L'chevasi, this is for my obligation, we say that it's considered stumim, and he could bring it as an ayla. So what's the difference? So the answer that here he's saying L'chevasi for my obligation, and he's a Nazir. So he has 3 kombanos that he has to bring. So over here we say there's a special halacha that, he's saying that if he says L'chevasi, Ravashi is saying, he says L'chevasi, then it's not brought as an ayla. Sorry. He says if it's L'chevasi, it's brought as it's each one, he has to bring each one individually. The chatas gets thrown out into the sea, right? We're talking about designated money here. The money of the chatas is thrown into the sea. The money for the ayla is brought as an ayla. The money for the shlamim is brought as a shlamim. How come before you had to throw the whole thing into the sea? He said because before, in that other case, who was the one that brought that case? It was a brisa. That case was 2 different obligations. It wasn't one obligation. We didn't know what l'chevasi really meant. Did it mean his sin offering, or did it mean the vow that he accepted on himself? But over here, where he's obligated all as in one pile, it's one, they translated biksa, it's one valley. all the money's coming from one fund for his Naziris offerings. So over here, it's going to have a different halacha. Yeah, that's what they say.
Rashi is coming in with an interpretation.
This when he says now l'chivasi, this is a big chiddush.
This is something new. I guess you can do that.
So, if you wanted to say, if you want to say that when we said before la fuke mihad tanya that this is actually an argument, before we said that you could bring it as an oila, but over here you say that each one is being separated, then this could be a very good argument. I mean, this would be clear that this is the argument. However, if you're not going to say that it's an argument, it's a different case, then you have to establish that the difference in the case is because the obligation of the sacrifice is coming from one source, and over there the obligation for the sacrifice is coming from two different sources. One is the sin and one is the vow. Okay. Question is, what would be a case of stumin? He says lachivasi. If lachivasi is already considered like he designated for my obligation, that's already considered like he specified. What would be considered unspecified? I don't know. What do they say over here? You say elu lakarbanisai. But if you say, which means these are for my sacrifices. But if you say these are for my obligation, then it sounds like he's saying a chata specifically. That's the problem. The word obligation means that it's specifying a chata.
But all of this whole discussion only applies where there's some unexpected change of circumstance, right? Situation. The person who's obligated, like he dies or
right. Otherwise, you can resolve this but with that solution, you take an animal and you say that whatever money belongs for this.
my point is resolve the exceptional situation.
Right. Amar Rava. Rava says that the halakha l'Moshe Sinai that we mentioned, that a person, that the money that's unspecified could all be brought as an oila, as an elevation offering. That's only hada amar ma'astum and yipul nedava nafla demechatas mi beinayim. That's only if the money of the chatas is in that pile as well. However, im nafla demechatas mi beinayim, if the money of the chatas fell from that pile, that means it's not in there, it's only oila and shlamim, then harein k'mefarashin, then it's considered that it's specified, and half the money has to go for an oila, and half the money has to go for the shlamim. It's as if you specified it. If it was unspecified, then the whole thing could be brought as an oila, one big animal, let's say. But now that there's no chatas money that's in there because the chatas money was set aside here, and it's been designated aside from this other money. And then you have these two animals together, then you have to split it in half. Okay. Tanya Kavasei de Rava. You have a brisa that supports Rava. It says, Elu lachatasi, v'hashar l'shar nesiresai. This money here is for my sin offering, and the rest of the money goes for the other offerings of Naziris, which means the oila and the shlamim. So the rule is, and then he dies. So what he does is the money for the chatas that can never be brought because a person that's obligated to bring a chatas that passes away, that you don't bring another chatas, you throw it into the sea, that money. The inheritors, they don't want to have that money laying around because they're going to end up using it. That would be a problem. So to avoid getting mixed in with the other things, they have to get rid of it right away. You throw it into the sea. Let's see, right? Did we already prove Rava's halacha? Yeah, we already proved the halacha just by what we said. That if the money of the chatas is not included in the other money, so then it's already considered, then you have to divide the other money in half. Now, if all the money is together and you spend all the money, there's money specified for a chatas. There's money specified for a oila and a shlamim that's in this other pile. We said they have to bring it separately. If you spend all the money, then there's me'ila. Actually, I think the rule here would be that you have two piles of money, right? You have half of it, you have one pile, a third of it, that's the chatas. That's one pile of money. Then you have the other money that's half of it is meant for being half is meant to be a shlamim. In the money that's a chatas, there's for sure me'ila. You're not allowed to use that money. It's consecrated money. Me'ila is personal benefit from things that belong to the temple. There's a violation of me'ila. But in the other money where half is a shlamim, you're not going to violate the rule of me'ila only if you spend all the money. If you only spend half the money, we'll say, okay, you spent the shlamim money. There's no me'ila on the shlamim until after it's sacrificed. And over here, it wasn't sacrificed yet. So that you won't have me'ila unless you spend it all. Let's see, he does it the other way. Let's say he says, this money here is for my oila. And the rest of the money is for my other sacrifices that I need to bring, which is a chatas and a shlamim. So here the rule is, the may oila yavi oila, umaylam bem. An oila is, of course, oila money. And there's, of course, me'ila there. And the rest of the money, which is a chatas and a shlamim, that's brought as a oila. Exactly what Rava said, that if the money of chatas is mixed in, then the rule is that it turns into it gets used as an oila. It's a special halacha l'meshim Sinai. Unique halacha. Yeah. When is there going to be me'ila in this case? I have a chatas in it. Because only if you use it all together. Because otherwise, we'll say, if you only spend half of it, we'll say that you spent the shlamim money. And then there's no me'ila. Tosfos asks, but 1 second, you told me that now it goes as an oila. And by an oila, there's me'ila automatically. They said, yeah, but it only turns into an oila once you turn it into an oila. Until you turn it into an oila, it's considered a chatas and a shlamim, which there's only me'ila on the chatas part, not on the shlamim part. So therefore, if you spend it then, if you spend only half, you won't have violated me'ila. We'll say that you spent the other, the shlamim part. Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav. Rav Huna says the name of Rav Leishan Olam Mois. When did we say that there's a concept of stumen, of money that's unspecified? Stam is like anonymous, like, unspecified. When do we say that? That's only if we're dealing with money. Then there's a special halacha that money is used as an oila, especially even though there was chatas money in there. It's halacha l'meshim Sinai. Rav Huna says in the name of this teacher Rav that's only with money. Aval behema, but if he designates 3 animals, then hariyakim farashes. That's considered like he already specified. Why? Because the animals are clear which animal goes for which, right? Yeah, that's how Tosfos starts off. It says that we're talking about that there's 3 different types of animals. There's a sheep. I wrote this somewhere. There's a sheep,
The ones in one day.
a female sheep, a male sheep, and a ram, two males. So basically, there's two lambs, a male and female. The female is the sin offering, and the male is the oila. And then the ram is for the shlamim. So if that's what you designated, so then it's clear that it's specified, because each animal has a different purpose. I see the lamb, I see the other lamb, I see the ram, so I know what each one is for.
At this point, you
Be
usually
careful with this chair. Taking yeah, it's like
at this point you usually say, what if the female sheep was used for Korban Pesach?
Oh,
You
yeah.
tell your story.
So you were on the phone. I thought it was Hillel that was on the phone. Okay,
It didn't say my initials.
I just said the phone number. Taisus then says that if that's the case, that you have the exact sacrifices that are meant for each one of these, the exact animal that's meant for each one of these sacrifices, then Rav Huna Marav is saying nothing. So obvious, he doesn't even need to say it. Probably the case is that we're dealing with three animals that are not exactly the ones that are brought for these sacrifices. And nevertheless, it's considered specified because it's animals. How is it considered specified? So if it's specified, well, how is it specified if you can't even bring this animal at all? Because but the only thing is that because the holiness goes onto an animal that's fit to be brought, that it goes onto it in more like an intense way, it becomes more holy, but as a sacrifice, so it's considered like it's specified. Even though you're going to need to exchange it. Taisus goes through this.
You say it's considered as if it was sacrificed, which is designated. The last,
Where it's considered like it's designated for the specific sacrifice. That's you see, what just happened here. We always said, we've been saying the whole time that if there's unspecified funds, funds that are allocated for the stumim, we said that gets brought as an isla. So Rav Huna says, name of Rav, that's only if it's funds. But if it's animals, then each animal is considered like designated for its specific sacrifice. And the chatas animal is, of course, going to be left to die in the isla because the owner's not alive anymore. Isla's brought as an isla, shlam as a shlam. Taisus says, if we're talking about that the chatas animal was the female lamb, and the oila is the male lamb, and then the ram is the shlamim. If that's what he's designated, then Rav Huna Marav is not telling me any chiddush, because that's the only possible thing that animal could be used for. So in order to make it into a chiddush, we need something surprising. He says we're dealing with that he took 3 bulls. Those are the animals that he's designated. He's trying to make a chiddush, that it should be a chiddush. Problem is that if that's the case, see, this is always how learning works. What you start off saying, what are you telling me? I know that already? He said, no, I'm telling you something that's new. And once it's something new, it says, well, who says you're right? You know what I'm saying? And then you go back, you ask the next question. That's what Taisus is doing here. He's looking for the chiddush, then he goes back and says, but maybe that's not true because we're going to have problems with Okay, the Gemara goes on. Once it's an animal, it's considered specified. Rav Nachman says, this that you said that an animal is considered specified. That's only if the animal is unblemished. But if it's blemished, then it's considered unspecified. Why? Because that animal is just considered value. It's not considered a sacrifice. So we're back to funds. It's not funds, it's not cash, but it's the equivalent of cash. Because it's not a sacrifice either. So it's just something that's been set, been allocated, that's going to be sold, and that's the money is going to be used just like as if it would be real funds. Okay, but if you had bars of silver, then that would be considered as it's designated. Now, here we're talking about where you had 3 bars of silver, and that's considered like he specified that this one is for this, and this one is for that, and that one is for that. As if he had separated the money. Not if it's 1 bar of silver, then it would probably be just money, but here it's 3 bars of silver. Okay. Even if it's bars of silver, that's also considered like funds, and it's considered unspecified. However, Soar shel kairos, I don't know, Savar or Sar, how do they pronounce it there? Savar shel kairos, but if it's a pile of beams, then that's considered specified. Now, what's the difference between if it's beams or if it's this? What's the issue here?
We learned this one. It's the same thing that was Mars. It's piled, so you know, don't touch that. The builder is going to use that as opposed to.
So it turns out, at least the way commentators here are explaining, is that the beams are left around. It turns out that these beams are not sold very easily. To wait for someone that's going to need these beams, and so therefore it sits around. So what we're saying here is that we right away, not easily liquidated. So right away you have to get rid of the kaptas one. They have to get rid of that because that can't be brought. And then you have the oila and the shlamim that have to be taken care of each in its when it gets sold.
Well, you have to get rid of the chatas beam. So what do you do? Splinter it?
You have to throw it into the sea.
Oh, that's splinter it. That's how
Does that say wood beam?
Right.
Could be steel. I assume it's wood. Kairos is
It makes that steel.
Sure. Bar inside the temple. You can see them.
There are steel bars inside the temple.
No.
Pittsburgh was
Rebar?
they would make a groove in the rock, in the protrusion in the other rock. They would get it to fit.
The original Legos.
Like Legos. I think that's how they would do it. No? At least on the pillars, they would do it like that. Those obelisks, whatever, they would have it like.
It wouldn't slide.
They would make it so
Lock in.
it would be like a Lego. Like they would chisel it out.
Lincoln Logs.
They would chisel it out so it should fit in and not move. Like chisel the top so it should protrude in one spot and then make an indent in the next one.
They had a way back in time. It was more taking iron. Naturally comes out of the ground.
Right.
And fitting it in between into slots in a way that when it was in the sun it would melt in
Oh yeah.
and hold it
Uh-huh.
Well, with
It probably wasn't iron. It was probably like lead or something.
perhaps it's that, yeah. It was something that had a low.
Right.
And it would melt. And like Lego.
with chocolate.
Chocolate.
Looks.
Okay.
That's what led.
So basically what we said now was that really the only thing that would be stumin is if it's funds. But once you start getting into other things, then it gets complicated. If it's an animal, then it becomes designated. And if it's a balmum, then maybe not. But if it's according to Rab Nachman by Yitzchak, not according to Rab Nachman, even if it's a balm, no. If it's a balmum, then it's considered stuma. Then it's considered unspecified. But a nascha, according to Rav Nachman, is considered specified. And Nachman Yitzchak says even the nascha is considered unspecified. And it's only the kairos that's considered specified. So the only thing that everyone agrees to here would be that money is considered unspecified. But everything else is going to be a problem. Animals, nafcha according to one, and a kairos according to everyone is the problem. It's not a problem, it's just considered specified. Gemara says, Amalei Rav Simi Barashi Rav Papa. Simi Barashi says to Rav Papa, my tamad the Rabbanan Damri Moyes, v'lei behema v'lei naspa, Moyes v'lei sabra. How come they're being so specific over here? They're saying money is the only thing that could be unspecified. But if you designate other things you allocate them for the sacrifice to be brought from them, then all of a sudden it's considered specified. Now, if that's the case, if you're going to take that serious, then if someone designates birds also, then we should say that those birds are considered specified. That the birds are considered. Why? It's only funds that are unspecified. But if he separates birds to bring for sacrifices, then we're going to consider them that they are, yes, specified. They'll say, okay, fine, big deal. Birds are specified. Who cares? Why is that a problem? Problem is that we have a statement from Rav Chisda that it's possible for birds to be unspecified, because Rav Chisda says that when you purchase the birds, you're able to specify them. When the kohen takes them from your hands, he's able to specify which one is the chatas, which one is. But anytime in the middle, you're not able to specify them. What we're seeing is that birds are considered unspecified. You told me before the only thing that's unspecified according to everyone is money. So we have a problem, which Rav Chisda says that birds are considered specified, birds are considered unspecified, when really the only thing that's unspecified is money. Gemara says, we learned that it was specifically money that was considered unspecified. Amarlei, so Rav Papa says back to Rav Simi Barashi on top of 27. This that it was taught in the Mishnah. Shimon ben Gamliel says, hey, Vishalish Behema is someone brings 3 animals, Belay Pirish, and he doesn't specify. What do? He separates 3 animals. What do you do with the 3 animals? He doesn't specify. Well, yeah, it's easy. The female sheep, which is fit for a chatas, the krav chatas is brought as a chatas. La'ila, the one that's fit for an ayla, which that was a male animal. The krav ayla is brought as an ayla. L'shlamim, which could be a male or female. The krav shlamim. Amai amet beim alav k'mafresh adamya. Why do you have to do that? We said that it wasn't specified. We said that animals are not specified. So 1 second, we're going to answer very quickly that we said that animals are specified. Well, we're going to answer that animals are specified when that's the only option. But what he's asking him here is, you said that money is the only thing that's unspecified. Then you asked me a question from Rav Chisda that there's birds that seem to be specified. That's birds that seem to be unspecified. That means it's not just money. Well, let me show you this. They're
specified by the gender and sex
Right.
in this case.
Right.
You know which is which.
Are you bringing 2 different? But do they have to be 2 different sexes?
One is under a year in a male, second is under a year in a female, and the third is a male over a year.
Right. The problem is that
Birds, I don't know.
so the birds we have a contradiction, because it seems from Rav Chisda that birds are unspecified. And we said in one of the comments of one of the statements over here, Rav Huna Marav, is Leishanu Alamais. Only money is considered unspecified, but an animal is considered specified. And Rav Nachman says that even an animal is only if it's a tmima, only if it's without a mum. So if it's with a mum, then it's considered unspecified. Now we're ignoring those details that he already spelled out, but we'll get back to that. Wait, so 1 second. Here we're saying that an animal is considered specified. You told me before an animal is considered unspecified. Now I know that was by a balmum, unspecified. But 1 second. Amarlei, he responded back. He says, Hassam, V'lakach v'asa amar Rachmana. Over there, I have a special halacha when it comes to birds. That you have two possibilities of when to specify the birds. It can only get specified in one of those two times, either when it's being purchased or when the kohen takes it from the owner's hands to be able to offer it up. And hachanami, in this case also, when it comes to the animal, did you want to think, did you want to say, the animal that's a chatas, that's a female animal, you're going to bring it as an oila, which is only a male animal. You can't, it's impossible. Yeah. What does this leave us with? That we're answering up the question about the birds, because we're saying that we have a special limit from a pasuk that the birds can only be specified at specific times. And therefore it's considered unspecified, which would be just like the money, which is unspecified. And when it came to the question about the animals, that it seems that the animals were also considered unspecified, and now we're saying that they're specified. Of course they're specified because that was specifically the type of animal that was like that. Now this goes back to what we said from places before, that when he designated the animals, we're talking about animals that were not specifically for the chata, specifically for the oila, specifically for the shlamim. And that was considered, that was Rav Huna Marav's chiddush, that was considered specified.
Why don't you say the birds are unspecified like money, because you let go of money, it just flies away, it's gone. And you let go of birds, they fly away, whereas animals, they ain't going anywhere.
Suppose not cookie on a leash.
You're talking about comparing it to the beams? That
No,
the beams
comparing
don't
the birds to money.
oh, that they disappear.
Especially when you have kids.
Well, if the money's in stocks, it should stay there.
But we're not talking about that, we're talking about liquid money.
Right,
If you have
right,
kids.
right.
Kids, I don't have kids anymore. My kids are older, I have grandkids. They don't demand, you just keep.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so here says, where were we getting before that the animal should be stumin? We said the animal is nefrashas. We're going to compare it to what Rav Chizda said. Rav Chizda said that the birds are considered stumim, unspecified. The animals should also be unspecified. He said he can't say that because the animals are a specific gender and age that requires them to be brought. He must have Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna asked the question: Umi amrit behima balasmum kestuma damya. Do you say that an animal that has a mum is considered unspecified which sacrifice it's being designated for? We have a problem with that because Tashema, come and listen. Ketzad amro heish megalech al nazir sabbat. Where is it said that a man can shave his head, but that doesn't mean shave his head, that means bring the sacrifices for his father's naziris? Now, we're going to give cases where he can't say that. We said, where is it yes said, but the examples that we're going to bring is where it's not said. Bisman Shahaya Huvav Nazirim. Let's say him and his father were both Nazirim. The Hifrishav Mayas Naziru say the father designated money for his animals. Umes, and he died. And he says, Harini Nazir Amanasha Galeach al Maisaba. Son says, I'm going to be a Nazir on condition that I'll be able to bring animals. I'll bring my father's animals, which means I'll shave my head with the money for my father, which means I'll be able to bring my father's animals. So the rule is that he can't do that. he has to bring his own animals, and his father's animals have their own halacha. Even though he's saying, I'm going to be a Nazir just to be able to deal with those animals, we say that it doesn't work. What's that aleph there? It's not supposed to be him and his father were Nazirim. It's supposed to be his father was a Nazir. You take out the word who. And then he becomes the Gemara, the wording of the Gemara said him and his father were Nazirim, and then he accepts on himself to be a Nazir again. The Bach takes it out. It says his father was a Nazir. Then he accepts on himself to be a Nazir. In order to deal with his father's animals, we say no. Let's say the father did not actually designate the money specifically which goes to which. It was all unspecified where the money is supposed to go, which animal it goes for. So then Yiplu Nedava, like we said from the Halach L'Moshe Sinai, that you bring it as a burnt offering. All the money goes to the burnt offering. It's called Ketzah Mizbeach. They keep the altar busy. Let's say there was the animals were specified. So chatas is tamas, like we said before, that the sin offering, that's what you're not going to be able to deal with. That has to be put to death. The Ayla is brought as an Ayla, and the Shlam is brought as a Shlamim. Now, Rav Hamnuna's question is, my love, is it not Filu Balas Mum? What does it mean that you bring an Ayla that's a Balas Mum? No, what it means is that the animal that was designated for the Ayla, even if it has a blemish on it, you sell it and you buy a new animal and you bring it as an Ayla. That's what the Gemara Rav Hamnuna is understanding. And therefore, we're saying, what are you telling me that a balas mum is considered unspecified? We have over here a brisa that says that it's considered specified. You have to actually take that animal itself and bring it for an oil, even though it had a mum. It says, lie, that's not the case. It's mima, we're talking about where the animal did not have a blemish. And that's why the animal has to be brought. Your question was based on an assumption which was incorrect. Aval balas mum kastumadami. But if it's a balas mum, if it does have a blemish, then we'll say that it's considered unspecified. So my year, you might, then why do you have to give me a case of money, that there was money that was unspecified? Then you could just say that even if there were animals that had a blemish, that's also considered unspecified. Why do you have to give me the case of money? If you wanted to tell me a bigger chiddush, tell me the bigger chiddush. Don't tell me the lesser chiddush. You're right. Balas mum lamai kadisha. But listen to this. What is the balas mum sanctified for? Lidami. So dummy, hainamais. It's the whole thing is just money. If it's just value, so then that's what we're talking about. Money is value, and that's value. So it doesn't have to tell me that if it was an animal that had a mum. Once you tell me money, that's what it means. Animal that had a mum is considered money. Okay. See if we can get through the next Gemara. Take us though. It's hard to stop in the middle of this. It's going to take us to the Mishnah. Massive Rava. Rava has a question. Karbanai says his sacrifice. The Karbanai hu yaitse ve'ina yaitse bekarban aved. He only fulfills his obligation if he brings his own sacrifice. But if his father left an animal for him as an inheritance, he can't fulfill his obligation with that. We're talking about here a carbon chapas. The father did a light avera, small avera, designates an animal. And then the son does a big avera. So he wants to bring his father's sacrifice for his big avera with the father. That same animal was designated for a small avera. Now the father doesn't have to be brought anymore because the father passed away. Let's say it was just the opposite. Let's say the father designated for a big avera and he just did a small avera. But let's say they both did the same sin. So maybe then it will work. Says no. It has to be his animal. Doesn't matter what type of avera it was. Right. So Talmud Karbanai. Karbanai yaitse. He can only bring his own sacrifice. He can't bring his father's sacrifice. Maybe when it comes to an animal, I can't use the father's animal. When it comes to they committed the same type of sin. light sin. They both did a light sin, or they both did a severe sin. Because when it comes to a Nazir, he can't shave his head for his father's Nazirus. Remember, we said his father's a Nazir, and his father designates animals. The son wants to deal with the father's animals, so he accepts on himself to be a Nazir. So we said it's not going to work. So that's when it comes to the animal itself, you can't deal with the father's sacrifice either, a sin offering, and that the son should deal with it. Take a look at this. Maybe if the father left over money for a chapas, I should be able to then use that money for the son's sin. And it doesn't matter if it was a severe sin that the father did and the son did a light sin, or the father did a light sin and the son did a severe sin. Why? Because when it comes to Nazirus, you're able to use the father's money. If there was mayas stumin, you could use that money for the son. What did we say? We said that mayas stumin is brought as an oila. So he could bring it as his oila. See, we could use it if it's just money. Gemara says, "Tamalema karbanai, the karbanai who yativeni yatsi bekarbanava." He can't use even the money of. We're on the next page. No, I just continued on to 28a. Yeah. Only his sacrifice he can use, and he can't use his father's, even the money from the sacrifice. What's the aleph here? Of it, that his father designated. Afilu minakala alakala, afilu minakala kala minachamura alachamura. Avol yetzi bekarban shehifresh laatzmai minakala alachamura minachamura alakala. Okay, granted, he can't use his father's sacrifice, but he should be able to use his own sacrifice, even though he designated an animal for a different sin, and now he's doing now he has another second sin, and he wants to use the animal for a different sin that he's designated for a different sin for the new one.
So that's not considered a trula, because
It's still the same sin offering. He's bringing it for a different sin that he committed. This Talmud Laimar karbanoi al chatasai. His sacrifice for his sin has to be designated and brought for the sin that it was originally designated for.
That's be for the very transgression. Can't be for major or minor, but even for minor, it has to be for that specific one, or could it be for another minor?
Oh, even if it's we said even for the same
Category.
No, so far we didn't say the same category. We said minakala ala chamura. So far that's the only thing we know. From a minor one for a major one. Takes out the word afilo here. It's supposed to say afilo minakala. Shekain im hifresh beima ala chelav vehivel adam, el adam vehivel ala chelav, veloy mal v'lekiper. Avol yetzi b'may shifresh la'atzmi minakala l'kala minachmer l'kala minakala chmer shekain im hifresh la'atzmi mais minachela vehivel ala adam vehivel ala chelav, veloy mal v'lekiper tamalem achatase shekabanu l'shum chete. Okay, maybe I get it. What's happening with you can't bring a sacrifice that was designated for one sin, for a different sin that was committed. But maybe if you designated money to purchase the sacrifice for one sin, maybe you can then take that money and use it to purchase a sacrifice for a different sin. Says that you also can't do. it needs to be specified for which sin you're designating that money for. Ketani miyas behema. While we were discussing this, we mentioned that an animal that's designated from the father, the son can't use. The father designate. Now we said that. 1 second. If it would have been money, so that money would have been unspecified, right? We were asking that maybe because money was different than the animal because the money was considered unspecified, and we compared it to the Nazir where unspecified money was able to be brought for an isla. Unspecified money was able to be brought for an isla. So in that discussion, when we mentioned that, we said there's a difference between if there's an animal or if it's money. So you said animal, my lava feel balas mum. Maybe when you meant over there, it was even talking about if the animal had a blemish. If the animal had a blemish, you told me that an animal with the blemish is also considered unspecified. It's also considered money. So why did you make that distinction between the animal and the money? The animal is different than the money because why do you make this distinction that the animal is different? Turns out that the animal with the mum is the same like the money. Both of them are unspecified. Both of them are just used for the value. Gemara says, "Loi." When we said animal, we weren't talking about an animal with the mum. We were talking about tamima. Aval balas mum mai. What would be with the balas mum if it actually had a blemish? Then it would be kastumadami. It would be like unspecified, and then the laws would change. It says my year diktani mai shifr shaviv. So then why did you have to talk about money that the father separated for the sacrifice? You could say even if it was an animal that the father sacrificed, but it had a mum. Listi balas mum. Same question we asked before. The Gemara answers, "Achanami, you're right. The lamai chazia. What would an animal with a mum, be used for? Lidami, for its value. Now for the value, hainamais. Then we're back to the money, because that's the whole point of the balmum. What is it going to be used for? That you can use its value to buy another animal. So it's still back to the same point that it's considered money value.
So what's the conclusion?
Conclusion is that a balmum, an animal with a blemish, is considered unspecified, just like money. We asked questions, but it seemed like it was considered specified. We answered that that was only talking about because it did not have a mum. That's why it was. Okay, let's leave it over here.
No, to me, this